The grand ballroom shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, reflecting a sea of opulent gowns and tailored tuxedos. It was the social event of the year, where power and privilege mingled over the sound of a live orchestra. At the center of it all stood Michael Carter, the epitome of success. With his sharp designer suit and an air of unshakable confidence, he moved through the crowd like a king surveying his domain. His name was synonymous with wealth, influence, and ambition. And tonight, all eyes were on him. In contrast, Sophia Adams slipped into the room quietly, her simple elegance setting her apart in a sea of extravagance. Her dark skin glowed under the golden light, her natural curls framing a face that held equal parts determination and grace. She wasn't here to blend in. She was here for an opportunity. Despite her modest upbringing, Sophia had carved a reputation for herself as a rising entrepreneur with big dreams and even bigger ideas. As fate would have it, their paths crossed near the grand buffet. Sophia seized the moment, introducing herself with a warm smile and an outstretched hand. Michael, distracted but polite, reciprocated. Their brief conversation began with small talk, but Sophia quickly steered it towards deeper topics. Her vision for using business to uplift underserved communities, her innovative ideas for sustainable development. For a fleeting moment, Michael seemed intrigued. Her words carried a spark of brilliance, a sincerity he rarely encountered in his world of superficial charm. But then, his polished mask slipped back into place. With a faint smirk, he remarked, "You're ambitious, but ambition alone doesn't make the cut in my world." Sophia's smile faltered, but only briefly. As Michael turned to leave, she whispered under her breath, "One day the tables might turn." Her words lingered in the air, unnoticed by Michael but carrying the weight of destiny. The bustling noise of the city cafe fell to a dull hum in the background, as Sophia Adams sat across from Michael Carter, her hands gripping the edge of her portfolio. This wasn't a chance meeting. Sophia had orchestrated every detail to bring her to this moment. After their fleeting interaction at the gala, she had spent weeks refining her business plan, studying his company's strengths and weaknesses, and preparing herself for what could be the opportunity of a lifetime. Michael, ever the commanding presence, leaned back in his chair with an air of disinterest, his phone in hand as if to remind her that his time was valuable. "You have 10 minutes, he said curtly, setting the phone down but keeping it within reach. Sophia took a deep breath, her voice steady but tinged with passion. "Mr. Carter, I have a proposition that could benefit us both. I believe in creating businesses that not only generate profit, but also create a meaningful impact. Your company has the resources, and I have the vision." She opened her portfolio, revealing a meticulously detailed plan for a joint venture that would revolutionize sustainable housing in underserved communities. Her words were laced with hope and vulnerability, each sentence a testament to her conviction. But her proposal didn't stop there. "I also think we could be more than business partners," she added, her voice softening. "I see potential for us to build something beyond the professional, a connection built on trust, mutual respect, and shared dreams." Michael, who had been scanning her proposal with mild interest, suddenly froze. He looked up at her, his expression shifting from indifference to disbelief, and then to a smirk that barely hid his disdain. "You're serious?" he asked, leaning forward. "You honestly think someone like you could stand beside me? In business or anything else?" Sophia's heart sank, but she held her ground. "I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering a partnership. Together we could—" Michael interrupted her with a laugh, loud enough to draw the attention of the other patrons. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But ambition alone doesn't make up for, well, everything else." The weight of his words hung in the air like a slap. "Someone like you," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Doesn't belong in my world. Dream on, Ms. Adams. Dream on." The room seemed to shrink around her as a few curious onlookers whispered and exchanged glances. Humiliated but unwilling to let him see her break, Sophia gathered her portfolio and rose to leave. Her legs felt like lead, her chest tight with suppressed emotion. Before walking out, she turned back to him, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You might not see it now, but one day, you'll regret this." Michael dismissed her with a wave of his hand, already reaching for his phone. Sophia left the cafe with tears threatening to spill. But within her, a fire had been ignited, a determination to prove him wrong no matter the cost. Sophia sat in her small apartment that night, staring out the window at the city lights. Her tears had dried, but her heart still ached from Michael's cruel rejection. For a moment, she considered giving up, letting the dream die. But as she thought of his mocking laugh and the words, "dream on," a spark ignited within her. She wasn't going to let someone else define her worth. If the world wouldn't give her a seat at the table, she would build her own. Sophia threw herself into her work with relentless determination. She took on every odd job she could find, from freelance consulting to tutoring business students, just to make ends meet. By day, she attended networking events, often being the only black woman in the room and enduring dismissive glances. By night, she pored over business books, learned the ins and outs of marketing, and polished her plans for the sustainable housing project she had once pitched to Michael. Her journey wasn't easy. Sophia faced countless rejections, with potential investors brushing her off as too ambitious or outright questioning her abilities. She endured microaggressions, moments of overt racism, and the constant pressure to prove herself in a world that seemed stacked against her. But every no only strengthened her resolve. Finally, after months of perseverance, she found her first believer, a retired teacher who invested her life savings into Sophia's vision because she saw the fire in her eyes. That initial spark of support lit a chain reaction. Slowly but surely, Sophia began to build her empire. Her first project, a small but efficient housing community, caught the attention of local media for its innovative design and affordability. The headlines read, "Young Entrepreneur Revolutionizes Urban Living." Investors began to take notice, and doors that once slammed in her face started creaking open. Sophia's name became synonymous with resilience and innovation. She expanded her business, hiring a diverse team of like-minded individuals who shared her vision of creating change. She didn't just build homes. She built opportunities, mentoring young women of color and giving them a platform in the male-dominated corporate world. As Sophia soared, Michael's life took a starkly different turn. His overconfidence and lack of foresight led to a series of bad decisions. A risky merger left his company hemorrhaging money. A scandal involving insider trading tarnished his reputation. The same friends who once toasted to his success now whispered behind his back, distancing themselves as his empire crumbled. He watched helplessly as his once glittering fortune evaporated. Deals fell through. Investors walked away, and the lavish lifestyle he had built on arrogance and greed came crashing down. Alone in his empty penthouse, Michael was left with nothing but regret. Sophia, now a force to be reckoned with, graced magazine covers and spoke at conferences. Her story inspired millions. Michael, on the other hand, was a cautionary tale of hubris and self-destruction. Unbeknownst to Michael, he would soon find himself at Sophia's door, not as an equal, but as a man desperate for help. And Sophia, who had risen from the ashes, was ready to decide his fate. The morning sun streamed through the dusty windows of Michael Carter's penthouse, but it did little to brighten the gloom within. Once the crown jewel of the city skyline, the apartment now felt like a tomb of forgotten glory. The walls, once adorned with priceless art, were bare, sold off to cover mounting debts. The echo of his footsteps in the empty space reminded him of how far he had fallen. Michael sat on a worn leather couch, a foreclosure notice crumpled in his hand. His empire was gone, swallowed by years of bad investments, legal troubles, and the betrayal of those he once called friends. The wealth that had made him untouchable had evaporated, leaving him with nothing but memories of a life he could no longer afford. The lavish parties, the private jets, the adoration, they were all gone. His phone buzzed weakly on the coffee table. The once endless stream of messages from associates and admirers had dwindled to silence. This time, it was a reminder of an overdue payment. He tossed the phone aside, running his hands through his graying hair. Michael's gaze fell on the old television he had managed to keep. With a heavy sigh, he switched it on, hoping for a distraction. Instead, he was greeted with a feature story on the national news. Sophia Adams, the woman who's changing the world. His breath caught as the screen filled with Sophia's image. She stood in front of a sprawling housing complex, surrounded by children and families smiling in gratitude. The reporter spoke of her meteoric rise, her innovative business practices, and her unwavering dedication to uplifting marginalized communities. Sophia's face radiated confidence and warmth, a stark contrast to the vulnerable woman he had dismissed a decade ago. Michael leaned forward, his heart pounding. The headline read, "From humble beginnings to global icon, Sophia Adams, named one of the most influential entrepreneurs of the decade." The irony struck him like a physical blow. The woman he had mocked, the woman he had deemed unsuitable, had achieved a level of success he could only dream of now. He scrambled to his laptop, pulling up article after article about Sophia. Her name was everywhere: magazines, business forums, philanthropic events. She was no longer just a businesswoman, she was a symbol of hope and resilience. Desperation clawed at Michael. He needed help, and she was his only chance. His mind raced with rationalizations. She's kind-hearted. She'll listen. She won't hold a grudge. But deep down, he feared the opposite. With trembling fingers, he composed an email. Each keystroke felt like swallowing his pride whole. He introduced himself, briefly referenced their history, and begged for a meeting. The words felt foreign coming from him. Michael Carter, the man who once believed he was untouchable. After hitting send, he slumped back into the couch, the weight of his situation pressing down on him. He had no choice now but to wait. The tables had turned, and for the first time, Michael understood what it meant to be truly powerless. Michael stepped out of the elevator, his heartbeat echoing in his ears as he faced the sleek, glass-paneled doors of Sophia Adams' office. The name Adams Enterprises, etched in gold lettering above the doorway, mocked him, a testament to the empire she had built, an empire he had once mocked as impossible. The receptionist greeted him politely, though her sharp eyes lingered on his disheveled suit and weathered briefcase. "Ms. Adams will see you now," she said, motioning towards the grand double doors that opened to a sprawling corner office. As Michael entered, he felt an overwhelming sense of unease. The office was a reflection of Sophia's success, minimalistic, yet undeniably powerful. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the city, while awards and framed headlines celebrating her achievements adorned the walls. And there she was, seated behind a polished oak desk, a commanding presence in a tailored navy suit. Sophia looked up from her laptop, her expression unreadable. Time had refined her elegance, but what truly struck Michael was her confidence. She was no longer the woman he had dismissed years ago. "Michael," she said, her tone measured and calm, though her eyes carried a flicker of recognition. "It's been a long time." Michael's throat tightened. The words he had rehearsed on the way here suddenly felt inadequate. "Sophia, thank you for agreeing to see me. I wouldn't have come if I wasn't desperate." Sophia leaned back in her chair, folding her hands on the desk. Desperate. Interesting choice of words. Her voice was steady, but the weight of her unspoken thoughts was palpable. He swallowed hard, the confidence he once wore as a shield now shattered. I've lost everything. My business, my home. I need your help. I know I don't deserve it, but... Sophia raised a hand, silencing him. You're right. You don't deserve it. Her words were cold, yet her demeanor remained composed. Do you remember what you said to me the last time we spoke? How someone like me could never stand beside someone like you? Michael's face burned with shame, his gaze falling to the floor. I was wrong. I see that now. I've lost everything because of my arrogance. Please, Sophia, I'm asking for a second chance. A tense silence filled the room as Sophia studied him. For the first time, Michael looked genuinely remorseful. His shoulders slumped under the weight of his past actions. She exhaled softly, her eyes hard but not unkind. Michael, she began, her voice steady, I'll think about it. But understand this, you're not here because I owe you anything. You're here because I decide whether you're worth saving. The room hung heavy with unspoken emotions as Michael nodded, his pride now completely surrendered to the woman he had once underestimated. Sophia remained silent for a moment, letting the weight of Michael's desperation settle in the room. The man before her was a shadow of the arrogant businessman who had once dismissed her. She could see the weariness in his eyes, the lines etched into his face from years of failure and regret, but pity wasn't enough to sway her. I'll help you, Sophia finally said, her voice firm yet measured. Michael's head shot up, hope flickering in his eyes. Thank you, Sophia, She raised a hand to stop him. But, she continued, her tone steely, it won't come for free. This isn't charity. If you want my help, you'll have to earn it. Michael's brow furrowed. I'll do whatever it takes, he said quickly, though uncertainty lingered in his voice. Sophia stood, her presence towering even though she wasn't physically imposing. She walked around her desk and leaned against it, folding her arms. You once told me I didn't belong in your world. Now you're going to live in mine. Sophia outlined her terms with precision, each one designed to strip Michael of his arrogance and force him to confront the consequences of his actions. You'll work for me as an entry-level employee, she stated plainly. No corner office, no executive perks. You'll be part of the team you once looked down upon. You'll answer to a supervisor, follow orders, and prove that you're willing to learn humility. Michael winced, his ego bruised, but he nodded. I understand. Any future success you achieve, whether through rebuilding your business or something else, will require you to give back. A percentage of your profits will go directly to supporting underprivileged communities. Michael's lips parted as if to protest, but one sharp look from Sophia silenced him. This is non-negotiable, she added firmly. The world doesn't need another selfish billionaire. If you want redemption, you'll have to make it count. Lastly, Sophia said, you'll spend time mentoring others who are struggling, just as you are now. You'll use your experience to lift them up instead of tearing them down. Michael swallowed hard, the magnitude of her demands sinking in. He was used to being in control, to calling the shots. But now, his future rested entirely in her hands. For a moment, his pride flared, tempting him to walk away. But the image of his empty penthouse, the foreclosure notice, and the news of Sophia's soaring success flashed in his mind. I accept, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll do whatever you ask. Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable. Good. But let me be clear, Michael. This is your one and only chance. Don't waste it. As Michael left her office, the gravity of what lay ahead weighed heavily on him. For the first time in his life, he was truly starting from the bottom. But within him, a small spark of determination began to grow. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could be his path to redemption. Michael's first day at Adams Enterprises was nothing short of humbling. Dressed in a plain shirt and slacks, he reported to the operations floor, a bustling space worlds away from the luxurious corner offices he once commanded. His supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa, handed him a badge and a stack of files. "You're on data entry," she said curtly, "and don't expect any shortcuts because of your history." It was a rude awakening. The work was tedious, the hours long, and the environment unrelenting. For weeks, Michael endured the glares of employees who recognized him as the man who had once epitomized arrogance. Conversations ceased when he entered a room, replaced by whispered judgments. Yet, despite the humiliation, Michael stayed. He worked late hours, asked questions, and began learning from the people he had once dismissed as ordinary. Sophia observed from afar, watching as Michael struggled through the lowest rungs of her company. She scheduled weekly meetings, during which she offered advice, but no sympathy. "Humility isn't just about accepting where you are," she told him during one session. "It's about understanding the value of others, no matter their role." Her words cut deep, but Michael took them to heart. Slowly, he began to change. He listened more and spoke less. He built relationships with his colleagues, earning their reluctant respect through his persistence and willingness to learn. He realized the arrogance and privilege that had once blinded him to the potential in others. As months passed, the dynamic between Sophia and Michael began to shift. The tension from their past faded, replaced by an unspoken acknowledgement of each other's journeys. During a particularly grueling project, Michael approached Sophia with an idea to streamline processes, a move that not only saved the team time, but also demonstrated his growing competence. Sophia, impressed but composed, nodded. "Not bad," she said with a faint smile. It was the closest she had come to praising him. Their interactions grew less formal, and Michael found himself genuinely admiring her leadership and vision. He realized that she wasn't just running a company. She was creating a movement, one that gave people like him a second chance. While Michael worked on rebuilding himself, Sophia wrestled with her own demons. At night, she often thought of his initial cruelty, the pain it had caused her, and the scars it had left. But as she watched him change, she began to understand the power of forgiveness, not for his sake, but for hers. One evening, she confided in her closest friend. "I'm not forgiving him to absolve him," she said. "I'm doing it to let go of the weight I've carried for so long. He no longer has power over me." In that moment, Sophia found peace. She had reclaimed her narrative, not as a victim, but as a victor. And in helping Michael, she had closed the chapter of her life that once held her back. The grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious convention center was filled with the elite of the business world. The event was the annual Global Entrepreneurs Summit, a celebration of innovation and leadership. Journalists and photographers lined the walls, eager to capture the speeches of industry titans and rising stars. But tonight, the spotlight shone brightest on Michael Carter. Standing at the podium, Michael adjusted the microphone, his gaze sweeping across the audience. His tailored suit and composed demeanor hinted at his restored confidence, but there was no trace of the arrogance that had once defined him. The murmurs in the room quieted as he began. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "tonight, I want to share a story of failure, redemption, and the extraordinary power of someone believing in you, even when you don't deserve it." The crowd leaned in, curious. Michael recounted his rise to power, his downfall, and the moment he had walked into Sophia Adams's office, broken and desperate. His words were raw and unflinching, a stark contrast to the polished speeches of the evening. "I was arrogant, entitled, and blind to the value of people around me, and because of that, I lost everything," he admitted. "But one person saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She gave me a second chance, not out of obligation, but because she believed in redemption. Michael paused, his eyes searching the audience until they found Sophia seated near the front. She watched him with a calm yet curious expression, her success evident in every detail of her presence. "I owe everything to Sophia Adams," he continued. "Her mentorship didn't just rebuild my career, it rebuilt me as a person. She taught me humility, integrity, and the importance of giving back." Michael stepped away from the podium for a moment as a large screen behind him lit up, displaying the logo of a new initiative, the Adams Foundation for Opportunity and Growth. Gasps rippled through the room as he explained its mission. This foundation, named in honor of Sophia, will provide resources, mentorship, and funding to young entrepreneurs, particularly women and minorities who face the same barriers she once overcame. This is my way of saying thank you, Sophia, for everything. The applause was thunderous, but Michael wasn't finished. He turned back to Sophia, his voice faltering slightly. "And Sophia, I want to say something I should have said a long time ago. I'm sorry. Sorry for the way I treated you, for my ignorance and cruelty. You didn't just prove me wrong, you inspired me to be better." Sophia rose to her feet, the room watching her intently. For a moment, she simply looked at Michael, her face unreadable. Then, with a small nod, she accepted his apology. As the event concluded, Sophia stepped outside, the city lights casting a glow over her. She felt lighter, as though the weight of the past had finally lifted. A reporter caught up with her, asking, "How does it feel to have someone like Michael Carter credit you for his success?" Sophia smiled, her eyes bright with confidence. "Sometimes," she said, "rejection is the universe redirecting you to greatness." She turned and walked away, her silhouette a symbol of resilience, strength, and triumph. Behind her, the world watched a woman who had not only overcome but redefined success on her own terms.